Hi, I'm Greg Dell with Attorneys Dell and Schaefer, and I'm here with Attorney Cesar Gavidia, and we're going to talk about chronic pain and long-term disability insurance benefits. And Cesar, specifically, chronic pain is probably one of the most common types of long-term disability claims. There is a ICD-10 diagnosis code for chronic pain, but usually a diagnosis is not chronic pain, it's secondary to a medical condition that you have. So in this video, I want to provide tips for people to put them in the best position to either get their benefits approved if they're experiencing chronic pain, because ultimately it's the pain that's disabling, not necessarily the diagnosis, or if they're on claim, things that they should continue to do in order to keep their benefits from being denied. So the first thing about chronic pain, what is it that makes it one of the most difficult aspects of what needs to be proved in a long-term disability claim?
You know, one of the biggest complexities with chronic pain is one, as you said, it primarily surfaces as a secondary diagnosis or a secondary, condition, kind of comorbid. So you have a diagnosis of something, it's lasted over, maybe a period of time, and your pain hasn't resolved. It's gone for 12 weeks, 3 months, whatever, or longer. Regardless of your treatment and your therapies, it just continues to be there. And one of the biggest obstacles with chronic pain is how the insurance companies see it so subjectively. In other words, it's kind of perceived by people differently. And the degree of the pain is experienced by everyone a little differently. And there's no machine, there's no test, there's nothing that we can really do to prove this is how often this person's experiencing chronic pain, and this is how severe it is every time they're experiencing this. So that's one of the biggest difficulties with it, is that it's tend to be viewed very subjective. There's no real objective data to show or prove the existence or the severity or the degree of impairment caused by it. Sure, doctors could say, well, this person had this injury occur, and it would be reasonable that they would have pain, and it could result in a chronic pain. But that's probably one of the hardest obstacles to overcome with that, is that subjectivity of it.
So with all the medical technology, there's nothing that someone can hook up to. It's not like our temperature or our vision. There's a lot of medical stuff they can identify now without the person. That's totally objective.
Right.
But there's nothing now to hook up to someone's brain to say that's pain level 5. Right. So in a way, disability carriers unfortunately think that a lot of people are exaggerating, which is a fancy word. Well, it's not a fancy word, but faking or malingering, meaning extending out their complaints of pain or making it in their mind that it's worse than it is. And the disability companies know that since there's no machine and no test that's going to accurately say this person's in pain or not, they take advantage of that. Mm-hmm. And they basically often say in the denial letters that we see is to say that your physical complaints of pain, your subjective complaints of pain don't match the physical objective evidence that's in your file. Right. So how do you deal with this as a disability lawyer? Because this is the most challenging aspect that you have. How do you help your claimants who are basically disabled by pain to prove or to meet the threshold required in the policy that they cannot do their job?
Well, we always start with the bedrock of every disability claim. The foundation is your medical records. And hopefully the medical records support that you're, one, in pain, that you're reporting that pain, that your doctors are acknowledging that you're having pain and severe pain. And perhaps they've prescribed certain medications or therapies, things that they wouldn't otherwise be doing if you weren't having this level of severe chronic pain, right? The other way, which is kind of after the fact, is creating a pain log, charting your pain, continuously documenting your pain. So when you do show up at your doctor's visit that month or the following, you can show them how often this is occurring, what's happening when it's occurring, what's potentially triggering it. That's important too.
So what a lot of disability claimants need to understand is that when this claim gets presented to the disability insurance company, or if you're on claim and the disability company is looking at it, they don't look at you as the claimant as a person, right? It's just, what are the papers before me? And whatever's in those papers, being your medical records, like you said, that's what we're going to consider in evaluating this claim. So, you know, the company gets the claim, the claimant gets the claim, the claims examiner gets the claim and is looking at it with 6 months of medical records before them. And they're only going to consider what's in there. So like you said, if the claimant doesn't go and say all the things that are going on and doesn't go often enough, which I would suggest should be in the beginning at least once a month, and doesn't go and see all the different medical specialists, and doesn't, like you said, you know, doesn't take the medication, or, you know, takes the medication, or goes for acupuncture, or goes for this test, or anything that can be done when you have a chronic pain that can't be measured, you have to do all of those things. Because if it's not done, you know that the disability company is going to say, well, I'm looking here at 6 months and you didn't do A, B, C, D, and E, or your doctor said do 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you didn't do that. So we don't think that your pain is severe enough that you are unable to work because there were recommendations made and you didn't do it. Now, what about the scenario, Cesar, where a lot of our clients, and I would say as much as 75% of claimants who go to the doctor with complaints of pain, the doctor doesn't know exactly what's causing their pain or their functional limitations. How do you deal with that in presenting a claim as well? Because the doctor, what I always like to say, treats the patient and not the chart. But
well, you know, causation is certainly would be helpful to know, but you don't have that in every case. In some cases, maybe you had an existing issue. You've had surgery. Your surgeon says everything turned out great. The hardware is set in. You're healing well. I don't understand why continue to have pain. And you know, those types of things could generally be a bit problematic, right? So I think it's just really important to continue with your kind of setting that standard of reporting frequently, of charting everything, of documenting everything, just so that you're able to come back and say, look, I understand perhaps there's not a direct link to a specific diagnosis, but this is happening. This is happening, and it's quite frequent. I mean, the disability policies don't require necessarily a causal link to something. Okay, it doesn't say it's got to be caused by a diagnosed condition that we could find it in a diagnostic manual or something like that. Generally, it's symptoms that are caused by something that are what's covered in a disability claim.
So, but we know in a way it's like the big disability insurance scam. Now look, I'm a huge fan of disability insurance coverage. I think everyone should have it. But more often than not, the denials we see is the doctor saying, well, there's no objective evidence to support your complaints, which is kind of nonsense, because if I were to show a real, true, honest doctor an MRI of somebody and it had a huge herniation, and I said, should this person be in pain? A true, honest doctor would say, not necessarily. Right. Because there's tons of people they've seen where they have this herniation, they have no pain, but then I show them another scan with someone who has no herniation and they're bedridden, you know, on OxyContin, can't move, getting, you know, adjustments every other day, you know, and yet their scan is almost normal, yet they're in tremendous pain. So you have to treat the patient, not the chart. But the disability company treats the chart and tries to be, in a way, unethical because they just hire a doctor to say there's no strong objective evidence. Now, some carriers, some policies have gone as far as requiring objective evidence or having limitations. Can you talk about what those are in some of these group disability policies?
Yeah, and you particularly do find them in the group or employee benefit plans or policies. And what they'll typically do, you don't usually find a complete exclusion to a condition that's, you know, chronic pain related. But they might include that or try to define that chronic pain through what's called a self-reported symptoms limitation. And typically what it would say is if it's caused by a condition that is primarily self-reported or we find to be subjective, then we're going to only limit payments to a certain period of time, to 24 months. Then there's other policies that you might find are a little more restrictive, and they say, well, we can demand objective evidence of certain conditions.
Those are rare, thankfully.
Those are rare, and those are really scary policies because you can almost identify every condition or problem or chronic pain issue that exists as being potentially subjective, right? Or finding no objective evidence of it. But it's going kind of back to these established defenses that you hear from these insurance companies all the time. I mean, if I, at this point, you know, after doing this for 16 years, if I see that denial letter where the word objective evidence doesn't appear, or lack of objective evidence doesn't appear, I'm surprised because they're just so accustomed to going back to those same reasons.
But you're not really surprised. I mean, they haven't changed since you started doing this.
Right. Yeah. So it's...
What about, so since it is, you've litigated probably 1,000 of these particular claims, whether it's ERISA or private individual disability, and since pain is so subjective, talk about how the disability companies try to attack the credibility of the claimant in order to prove that their complaints are not legitimate, as opposed to them attacking the medical records.
So that can easily be done or by the insurance company through just, you know, following the person through surveillance or just looking at their social media, seeing what their level of activity is, looking at their medical records and finding that they reported that they had some good days, you know. So they tend to, you know, cherry pick through the records, find the records or visits that favor them, find that there's a lack of data or testing that's showing that there would be a certain degree of impairment or a certain degree of severity to their pain, and that all goes to discrediting the symptoms that they're expressing, and like I said, going back to the surveillance, following them, you know, running different errands, activities, saying that, well, we saw that you were, you know, out from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and you stopped at the grocery store, you went to Target, you picked your kid up from school. Right. And, you know, that shows that you didn't seem to have a strange way that you were walking. You seem to be walking normally. You seem to be able to pull a cart out and push it. And so they discredit you through those types of things.
So the one thing I always tell all of our clients, and the important tip in this video for that, is you have to be honest in everything that you report. It's no big deal if you can go to the grocery store for 2 hours. I mean, if you're doing it every day, it's a big deal. But if you are honest in your complaints about what it is, because remember, working is about working with reasonable continuity, 8 hours a day for 5 days a week, 40 hours a week. That's the threshold standard. You can go out one day, you can go to your kid's soccer game, you can go walk the dog for a half hour, you can go to dinner with friends, but having to be a reliable employee 8 hours a day, 5 days a week is a completely different animal. Now, a lot of people when they fill out these claim forms don't understand the significance of what they're doing, and they think that, well, if I tell them I can walk for more than 30 minutes or sit for more than an hour, they're going to think I'm good to go back to work. So they basically, somewhat in a way, exaggerate their limitations, and it comes back to really bite them and sting them in a way where now the disability company has something over their head because they get you on video doing something. We can deal with any video. What's hard to deal with is when you told the disability company, no, I'm limited in this way, I can't do this. Or you tell your doctor, if I stand for more than 10 minutes, I got to lay down, and then they got you at the mall for 30 minutes. So, but if you're honest about it, they have nothing, because then we're able to argue there's nothing there in that record that wasn't already told to you. And so,
and the more we know, the better. I mean, the better we can prepare, the better we can address and challenge their defenses and all of that.
So I think the takeaways are with chronic pain, document as much as you possibly can. Your claim's only as good as bad as you look on paper. So put everything down every time you see a doctor, take all of the doctor's recommendations, fill all the scripts, do all the remedies, the treatments, try the home therapy exercises, do whatever you can to be able to then have the ammunition to say, look, turn to them, to the disability company. What else could I do? What would you do, claims examiner, if you were in my shoes? Because I'll take your job and I want to feel better because I'm the one here who can't work, taking a 40% hit on my income from what I'm supposed to get, suffering while you're determining whether or not you're going to pay me or not paying me. So what else could I possibly do? Because if you can say, I did everything, then you're in a good spot. But if you didn't do everything, then they have a leg up on you. The other thing is be honest about everything that's going on. Don't exaggerate it. And like you said, keep a pain journal or a symptom log of everything that's going on a daily basis when you have things. Because months or weeks or years down the road, if you have this log, you can portray what was going on a daily basis. And that has a human dynamic to it, in my opinion, about relating to what's going on, every day for that particular person. So those are some of the tips that are really important for proving chronic pain. In terms of working with our law firm and how we can help you moving forward, feel free to call Caesar or myself. We always offer you a free initial consultation to review your claim. We'll simply ask you to email us a copy of your disability policy. If you've been denied, we'll ask you to send us a copy of your denial letter. We also encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking the button below because we regularly put out videos like this on a weekly basis where we're offering tips and strategies for how to handle a disability claim. We have lots of information you can search on our website about your particular disability company, your medical condition, your occupation. We want you to be able to take all of the free information that we have available and allow yourself to think like a disability insurance claims examiner. The more you can think like that, the better position you're going to be in to keep your benefits from being denied. The other thing is that no matter where you live in the country, we can help you. And should you need us in the future, we look forward to the opportunity to speak with you.